Welcome back, everyone. Ready to dive into some more fascinating concepts? Today we're exploring a bit of Neville Goddard.
Oh, I like Godard.
Yeah, his ideas can be pretty mind-bending,
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
but that's why we love to unpack them, right?
Exactly.
We're looking at his YouTube video, No One to Change But Self,
Okay.
which, already kind of gives you a hint of where this is going.
Yeah.
For anyone who needs a little refresher, Goddard was a 20th century spiritual teacher. And he was really known for his lectures and writings on the power of imagination and the law of consciousness. So today we're going to see how he believed we could actually transform our reality.
I mean, it's kind of the ultimate question, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
how do we change? How do we get what we want?
Exactly. And he had some pretty radical ideas about that.
Well, what I find so interesting about Godard is that he's not just talking theory. He had these intense mystical experiences that really shaped his beliefs.
Right. He's coming from experience.
Yeah, and he really believed in applying these concepts to everyday life.
I think that's what makes his work so appealing to so many people. It's not just some abstract philosophy.
Right.
It's something you can actually use.
Exactly. And in this video, he gets right to the point. He says that the only way to change your external reality is to transform your internal consciousness first. You have to harness the power within.
That's a pretty powerful statement right off the bat.
Yeah. And then he goes on to share this amazing story from his own life. He describes being at sea,
Okay.
deeply meditating on this idea of perfection.
Perfection. Okay.
And he reached such an intense state that he had a vision of himself
Wow.
healing the sick and just bringing wholeness to everyone around him.
It's like his inner state of perfection manifested in that vision.
Exactly. He became what he was contemplating.
That's incredible. So it's not just about thinking positive thoughts.
Yeah.
It's about a much deeper shift in consciousness.
Yeah. He talked a lot about a law of consciousness that governs our reality. And this law basically shapes our external world according to our inner state.
So it's less about wishful thinking and more about aligning your inner self with what you want to experience.
Absolutely. He used this term assumption, which basically means we experience what we deeply believe to be true about ourselves and the world.
So our beliefs shape our reality.
In a nutshell, yeah. He had this famous quote, "There can be no outer change until there is first an inner change. As within, so without."
That's a good one. I like that. But how do we actually change our inner world? Like, where does imagination come in?
That's where things get really interesting. Godard believed that imagination is the key.
Okay.
He said that by intensely feeling and imagining ourselves as we want to be, we actually shift our consciousness.
So we're not just daydreaming here.
Yeah.
We're talking about using our imagination in a very deliberate and focused way.
Right. To align our inner state with what we want to experience.
So it's almost like visualization, but even deeper.
Yeah. He believed that when we deeply meditate and really connect with a specific state,
Yeah.
it can lead to visions and even changes in our behavior.
Wow. So our actions start to mirror our internal transformation.
Right. It all comes back to that idea that as within, so without. Our inner world shapes our outer experience.
Okay. I'm with you so far. But then he goes on to talk about the power of strong emotions.
Yeah.
Like love and hate.
Yeah. This is where it starts to get really mind-bending.
He said they can transform our consciousness. What did he mean by that?
Well, he believed that these strong emotions could influence what he called our ascent or descent in consciousness.
Okay. Ascent or descent.
So, for example, he talks about how war, which is obviously fueled by hate,
Yeah.
leads to this societal descent into materialism and greed.
Like a collective shift in consciousness.
Exactly. It's like the collective consciousness becomes fixated on these darker desires.
That's a pretty sobering thought.
It is, but then he contrasts that with the idea that by cultivating love and focusing on whatsoever things are lovely and of good report,
Okay.
we can actually experience a positive transformation.
So it's about consciously choosing what we focus our energy on.
Exactly. What we focus on shapes who we become and what we experience.
So essentially, are we saying that, according to Goddard, we have a choice? We can either let circumstances dictate our inner state, or we can consciously shape our inner world to transform our reality.
Exactly. He said, and this is another one of those great quotes, he said, "There is no transforming power in death." It's like he's saying the true transformation happens during our lives, within our consciousness.
I see. So it's not about waiting for some external event to change us.
No.
It's about actively choosing to change ourselves from within.
Right. And he even takes it a step further. He says that protesting against something that happens to us
Yep.
is actually protesting against a law of our being and our ability to control our own destiny.
That's a pretty radical concept, like taking responsibility on a whole other level.
It is. He's basically saying our circumstances are a reflection of our inner world. So instead of complaining or trying to force change externally,
Yeah.
we should first look inward and see what needs to shift within our own consciousness.
So it's an inside-out approach to change.
Exactly. And he uses this analogy of our lives being molded from a dimensionally larger storehouse of our being.
Yeah. So like there's this vast potential inside each of us,
Mm-hmm.
and what we experience is just a manifestation of what we hold in our consciousness.
Yeah.
That's a pretty powerful thought.
Yeah, it is.
But it also raises the question, like,
Yeah.
if our current reality is a reflection of our inner world,
Mm-hmm.
how do we actually go about changing it? Like if we're not happy with where we are,
Right.
how do we shift that?
Well, Goddard believed that we could rub out undesirable states by consciously shifting our focus.
Okay.
He talks about imagining, this is another one of his beautiful phrases. He says, beauty for ashes and joy for mourning.
That's a powerful image.
Yeah,
Replacing those negative thought patterns with something more positive and uplifting.
right. And it's not just about thinking positive thoughts, like slapping a happy face sticker on a bad situation.
No, I get that.
It's about a real shift in consciousness, where we actually start to identify with our desired state and truly believe it's possible.
So it's that belief, that assumption
Exactly.
that ultimately shapes our reality.
Precisely. And he talks a lot about the importance of feeling the reality of what we're imagining. It's not enough to just think about it.
Mm.
We have to actually embody it, feel it in our very being as if it's already happening.
So it's not just mental, it's emotional too.
Right. And, he even says that during those moments of deep meditation, when we've achieved this kind of union with the state we desire,
Yeah.
we might experience visions or start behaving in ways that are aligned with that state.
So our actions start to mirror our internal transformation.
Exactly. That's where the power of imagination really comes in. It's about using our creative faculty to build a new reality in our minds
Mm.
and then allowing that reality to manifest in the physical world.
It all goes back to that central idea, as within, so without. But I gotta ask,
Yeah.
in a world that often feels so chaotic and unpredictable, how can we be sure this actually works? Like, how can we trust that changing our inner world will actually lead to tangible changes in our outer experience?
That's a great question. And, Goddard's ideas might seem mystical or even magical to some people.
For sure.
That he was very adamant that this is a law, a principle that operates consistently and reliably.
So it's not about hoping or wishing for things to change.
Yeah.
It's about taking deliberate action to transform our consciousness,
Right.
knowing that this will inevitably lead to changes in our external reality.
You got it. And, in a world that often feels so chaotic and out of control,
Yeah.
Goddard's message is actually very hopeful.
Yeah, I can see that.
He reminds us that we have more power than we realize to shape our lives and create the reality we desire.
It's like we're the artists of our own lives.
Oh, I love that analogy.
And our consciousness is the canvas.
Yeah. Just like an artist carefully chooses their colors and brushstrokes, we can choose the thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that we want to use to shape our reality.
But let's be real for a second. That's not always easy, is it?
No, it's not.
I mean, we're constantly bombarded with external influences and messages that can pull us away from our desired state. So how do we navigate that? How do we stay focused on our inner work when the world around us feels so chaotic?
It definitely takes conscious effort and practice
Yeah.
to cultivate that state of inner harmony and alignment.
Right.
But the more we focus on it, the more natural it becomes.
It's a process.
It is. And, Goddard even points out that our circumstances are too closely related to my conception of myself not to have been formed by my own spirit.
Wow. So it's like we're constantly projecting our inner world outward, whether we're aware of it or not.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to become mindful of our thoughts and feelings and choose the ones that serve us.
Because even if we're not actively shaping our reality, our subconscious mind is always working in the background.
Exactly. And, he also reminds us that we can't receive more than our assumptions affirm.
Oh, that's interesting.
So if we're holding on to these limiting beliefs about ourselves or the world,
Yeah.
we're actually blocking ourselves from experiencing the fullness of our potential.
It's like we're putting a ceiling on our possibility.
Exactly. But the good news is we have the power to change those assumptions.
So we can choose to believe in ourselves,
Mhm.
believe in our dreams,
Mhm.
and believe that a better reality is possible.
Absolutely.
This has been an incredible journey through Godard's ideas.
It has.
It feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, me too.
But it's definitely given me a lot to think about.
His message is a powerful call to empowerment. He's reminding us that we're not victims of circumstance,
Right.
but rather creators of our own reality. And that's a very powerful concept to consider.
Yeah, it really makes you think about all the potential we have.
It does.
And it challenges us to be responsible for the reality we create with our thoughts, feelings, beliefs.
Exactly. We're not just passive observers.
No, not at all. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Neville Goddard, what would you say is the one thing you hope our listeners take away from all this?
I guess if I had to boil it down, I'd ask, if your thoughts and feelings shape your reality, what kind of world are you creating right now?
That's a good question to leave everyone with.
Yeah, something to ponder.
Lots to think about. Well, thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Always a pleasure.
And we'll see you next time for more mind-expanding explorations.